Again, welcome everyone to this Wildfire and Landscape Resilience Task Force. I'm Wade Crowfoot. I lead the Natural Resources Agency, and along with my colleague Jackie, who leads the Forest Service in this region, we chair the task force. We have probably well over 100 people here at the Natural Resources Agency headquarters in Sacramento, and many more joining us online. If you participate in the task force, you know we meet quarterly, and we rotate between 2 meetings in Sacramento with an alternated by meetings out across California in the regions. And of course, this is our meeting in Sacramento, and we're really excited that this meeting will focus on overviewing, providing a summary of the updated draft action plan that is really meant to guide this broad set of activities that we coordinate and drive forward together to build wildfire resilience. I'll start it off with my co-chair and just provide some opening remarks. I would start by saying, as we head into what has historically been the height of wildfire season, it's important to recognize just how much progress we have made together toward managing catastrophic wildfire risks. Much of this task force is focused on the upfront proactive actions that we take, building that resilience to wildfire, but I do want to acknowledge just the growing and strengthening response capacity that we continue to have. I'm really proud of our colleagues at CAL FIRE and of course federal and local agencies for strengthening response, but really the response capacity that I know best is CAL FIRE. And I just want to acknowledge that they continue to bring on firefighters thanks to the legislature and the governor's investment in more boots on the ground, including since our last meeting an announcement that over 1,000 California Conservation Corps members have been hired into CAL FIRE. That's been a long-term goal to recruit more of our Conservation Corps members who do great work in the fire camps every year into the cadre of CAL FIRE. So that's great. And then I'd note that the governor's office shared earlier this week that we have now deployed the 4th C-130 air tanker into the CAL FIRE fleet. And then we also announced the launch of our 11th helitack base, this one being in San Diego. So as we continue to strengthen our response within the state, we have more and more proactive projects getting approved on the ground to protect both communities and landscapes. Thanks to so much good work across agencies, we are glad to report that over 400 wildfire safety projects have been expedited. We utilize the governor's emergency powers to establish a permit suspension process through our agency and our sister agency, Cal EPA, that enables those projects to proceed without the usual set of environmental permits if they agree to abide a 13-page environmental protection plan. So this is very much our vision of expediting work while protecting the environment, and we're really excited that it is working. I will note that it was a temporary suspension, so we're interested in whether the legislature would consider codifying a streamlining process this year. And funding continues to flow across the state for these projects. And I note that CAL FIRE last month announced $70 million of additional funding for community-focused wildfire prevention and resilience projects. Also, since our last meeting, a very important report was released, which we know as the SB 254 report or the Senate Bill 254 report by our colleagues at the California Earthquake Authority. The legislature directed the Earthquake Authority to assess really how we get our hands around growing wildfire liability and cost in the wake of those horrific wildfires in Los Angeles and the damage. And one of the key points of that report that was released publicly several weeks ago was one foundation of reducing liability and cost is reducing risks on the ground. And so a key thrust of that report was the work that we can continue to strengthen within communities to mitigate the risk. And I'm really excited that one of the pillars of the proposed draft action plan is really focused on a framework to strengthen community-based mitigation. We've done a lot of work in the landscapes across California and around communities, and this action plan proposes stronger thrust than ever on actions that can be taken in communities and how do we coordinate those actions and make them strong and consistent across the state. We're excited with the proposals that are included in the action plan, and we look forward to the legislature figuring in as they are in real time to help us strengthen a framework for the state to build our community-based mitigations. I just got back from Washington, D.C. late last night, and I want to share, as I did with my colleague Jackie, that I had a chance to meet with Forest Service Chief Tom Schultz. I'm always very appreciative that Chief Schultz is so accessible to me and to us when we want to connect. Really important, one, for us to convey some ongoing concerns about federal funding proposals and cuts to personnel at the U.S. Forest Service, as well as cuts to the science program across the Forest Service and the proposed closure of important scientific facilities across California. We wrote a detailed letter to the Forest Service about those concerns, and I was able to verbalize those to Chief Schultz. That remains a concern. And we talked about all of the alignment that we have currently with Chief Schultz in important areas, including prioritizing the most high hazard areas for risk reduction and expanding prescribed fire across landscapes across California. So it was a candid meeting and ultimately really productive to keep lines of communication open. Lastly, I want to share that this is the last meeting for our colleague Forrest Schaefer as the Deputy Director of the task force. Many of us have known Forrest and worked with Forrest for several years, and I think it's safe to say he is really the glue that has kept us together as the task force. Forrest moves on to an exciting new chapter at the Watershed Research and Training Center as a Senior Director of Cooperative Fire, building out these frameworks to get more good fire on the ground across the country. I have been deeply, deeply thankful and very impressed with Forrest over the years for his level of organization, articulateness, collaboration, and ultimately just this forward-looking approach that he's had. So, Forrest, raise your hand. I don't know where you are. You're in the back. And we're really excited to be able to continue to work with you in your new capacity. And with that, I'll turn it to my colleague, our regional forester.
Turn my mic on. Thank you, Wade, so much. And thank you all for being here today. Had a little bit of an easier time getting here than the last meeting. If any of you were with us, it was basically the plane, train, automobile. I had plane delays. I had a rental vehicle that broke down alongside the road, had to call for help. But I made it. I was only about 2 minutes late for that meeting, and I came flying in the door, and then Wade's like, perfect timing, take the mic. And I had about a 30-second turnaround. So I feel a little bit more put together right now. But, I'm in my 7th month, hard to believe that, of holding this role. And I was sharing with some folks. I met with actually our Cal Fire folks and state forester yesterday on a pre-fire season meeting. But I was sharing with them of just how much I felt like I have gained from the time here in California and the appreciation for it. And hopefully what I've been able to do is also be a bit of an ambassador for California and the relationship that we have from the Forest Service perspective with the state and with the partners here. If you aren't a part of it or you don't engage with it directly, I don't think you get the full understanding of what comes from this level of collaboration, coordination, and commitment. And so the 5 years when I, was doing some background research and trying to pull together, because Forrest did a really good job with multiple engagements of saying, hey, can you bring this up? Can you talk about it? And one of the points I think he wanted us to talk about is how have we evolved over the last 5 years from when this was first put into place, and what have we accomplished? And it is pretty phenomenal for what we have done together with the partnerships, with the collaboration, the ways and means and different avenues that we come together on here in California is amazing. For the Forest Service, when we talk about, I think when this was initiated 5 years ago, we got, according to the folks who were here, we got some pretty clear messages about we're in a crisis in the state. We need to act faster, and we need to do a lot more. And so width and depth and speed, it was all part of what I think was described in regard to the why we were undertaking this. And so we got after it with the partners, and the partners, it's the feds, it's the state, it's industry, it's all the collaboration groups that care deeply about, what is happening here. And so we have increased the pace and scale. When you think about, I think for us over the last 5 years, we've actually averaged about 330,000 acres of treatment here in California. That's about a 15% increase over the 5 years previous. But one of the differences is we've gotten really better and have made, I think, great improvement on the where we're doing the treatments, the why we're doing them, the how we're doing them. So the acreage may not have been a massive increase, but the gains that we're getting from doing the right work in the right location, in alignment, I think that's where the big improvement is, on top of an increase in acres, because we're doing better work, more thoughtful, more lined out, and more, again, coordinated. We're talking cross boundary at a width and depth we've never had before. We're talking about in this last 5 years, and especially I think the last year, we're talking about how do we truly share this work? How do we work with CAL FIRE, and how do we let partners step in to help us accomplish what we on our own can't do, right? Wade, you brought up some of the challenges we've had, where we find ourselves right now in this reorg and not having everybody that we need. So when we ask partners, I think this is part of the Forest Service learning and growth, is when we ask you to step in, we've got to be pretty comfortable with letting you step in a whole lot of different ways than maybe you have in the past. And that's a huge growth factor for the U.S. Forest Service, because for years, we were the ones that had to hold everything. And now I think we have that recognition of, to get done what we really need to get done on these landscapes, we've got to be more comfortable with partners. And I haven't brought up the tribes yet, but yeah, I think we all agree on the significance of partnering with our tribal partners, nation to nation. They're very vested on our lands, but I think in all lands across the state of California. And so that's where the Forest Service, I think, has really been putting some attention into thinking through, how do we do it in a way that shares truly at all levels the responsibility of this work. So I think we're doing great things. I will keep telling the story. I don't know how much longer I'll be in this role, probably for a little while, but for me, I am so proud to be at the table and be able to tell the good story of the collaboration, the partnership here in California. So I'm excited. I feel very privileged to have a little bit of a role here. And I am super excited about this being released and seeing what we can do going forward. So I really thank all of you. I've not looked at this side of the table, but collectively, it's a very impressive group of folks who've come together.
Well, huge thanks to you. You lead large geography from, I think, Alaska to the Mexican border. And the fact that you're here in person, you've been here in person, means a lot to us. And as we talk about a lot, wildfire doesn't recognize jurisdiction. And I think the people that we protect, the Americans that we protect, really expect us to work together through thick and thin. And that's what we're doing. So thank you for that. And on that note, our executive committee is comprised with federal agencies, local agencies, tribal leaders, and state agencies for that very reason. It's an all hands on deck approach. So as we move into today's work, which is to hear about this updated draft action plan, really start to understand where we're updating our work, I'd invite any executive committee members that wanted to, just to reflect on where you think major progress has occurred and what you're looking toward in this new action plan. Yeah, Supervisor.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. I'll take a stab here. For me, when I reflect back on the last 10 years, really all the way back to the Tree Mortality Task Force, I think about the Local Adaptation and Resilience Fund, the LATF fund, and the commitment that the state made to help keep counties whole in the face of tree mortality. In Madera County, we continue with that program to remove hazardous trees from the public right-of-way. And it's been an amazing partnership. When we went down that road with the Tree Mortality Task Force, I don't think anyone would have imagined where we would have gone, right? That this evolution would have taken place into, the Wildfire Task Force and all the benefits that have come from that. When I look up and down the state from San Diego to Kern County, all the way up to Humboldt, counties are scaling to help meet the need. Local agencies are scaling to meet the need as a result of programs like RFFCP. In Madera County, through these partnerships with local government and the state and the feds and the community, of course, we've been able to resurrect our Fire Safe Council. They now have a robust project pipeline that will help keep our communities resilient in the future. When I think about my time at the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District and smoke management efforts and the partnerships we've made with CAL FIRE to help ensure that we can get good fire on the ground, this progress is instrumental in our path forward. So when I look at the draft plan today, really a guide for the next 10 years on how we're going to address these issues, I think about all of the unintended benefits that may come from that. We talk a lot about unintended consequences, but through this plan, I think it would be difficult for all of us to really truly imagine where we're going. So I think it's important that as we evaluate this plan, we evaluate it with open eyes. And we continue to expand upon these partnerships, breaking down silos at the state, federal, local, and within private industry, because that's what success looks like for us. It's the three-legged stool. And without government, without community, without private industry, we will not be able to meet the need. So when we look forward over the next 10 years, I think it's imperative that, this organization continues on. Obviously we just had an election on Tuesday. So there is, some questions. What will happen when the next administration comes in? And so I think it's important that all of us continue to advocate for the good work that's been going on here at the Wildfire Task Force. So thanks, Wade, for all your leadership. Thank you, Jackie, as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I didn't actually introduce you. That's Bobby McCauley, who serves as supervisor of Madera County and is representing the California State Association of Counties. And others, as you share any thoughts you have, if you could just introduce yourself and your affiliation, that would be great. Others? Don?
It seems like everybody's a little shy today up here, so I guess I'll just grab the mic and go for it. Don Hankins with the Indigenous Stewardship Network, and good morning, everyone. I am really excited every time I come to these meetings, one, to see all of you in the audience and to have the opportunity to interact, but when I reflect on, what the past action plan really laid out, I think obviously there were 99 elements of it. And as I looked through it, there were at least 7 that were focused on supporting tribal stewardship. And to me, that's a significant step in a direction that really lays a foundation that the state had never really taken before, to advance the opportunities to put fire back onto the landscape in a way that this land had evolved with. And in particular, of the things, there are 3 actions that really stand out to me that really help to advance that. One is the strategic plan for the beneficial use of fire, which had specific goals that were targeting the use of Indigenous fire stewardship in that space, and really laid a foundation for support for cultural fire workshops that many of us have heard about, and funding and recognition of tribal sovereignty in that space. I also think about the general support for cultural burning that was through funding mechanisms that CAL FIRE in particular really stepped up into that space to provide opportunities to come in and support some of the cultural fire workshops and those kinds of things. And then lastly, I would say the Regional Fire Forest Capacity Grant Program through the Department of Conservation and its expansion that was called out for in the action plan really stands up. Obviously, the Indigenous Stewardship Network is a beneficiary of that as a block grant recipient. But I think about some of the other tribal organizations that have also been supported through that work, such as the Terra Group, the Tribal Ecocultural Restoration Group in Lake County, for instance, is another beneficiary of that. And then also through the regional beneficiaries like the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and others really help to elevate that. And so we're seeing progress. Sometimes we often look at the acres as a metric for that. While we're starting to see more acres coming online, I think the biggest impact is really the number of people who are engaging in these things. And I think in the future, we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, and the benefits will come back on that. So I appreciate the time to be able to share that. Thank you.
Thanks, Don, for all of your leadership and collaboration too. Over to you, Daniel, our State Fire Marshal.
All right. Well, good morning. First, on behalf of our Director and Fire Chief, Joe Tyler, it is a pleasure to be here this morning. I was telling Don, it's a pleasure to get to sit with him. We spent a lot of time on Zoom, and so this is an opportunity for all of us to get to see each other face to face. And Secretary, I really appreciate you highlighting the amazing fire response buildup that we have seen. As we transition here into the month of June and really into the peak of our fire season, it has already been a very busy several weeks, evacuations, even here in this region just a day or so ago. But it also is a good reminder that while that response side is so critical and has really been built up, we are still laser focused on community preparedness. And today's going to be really exciting. Obviously, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about the work that we've built into the draft plan with many of our partners, talking about how we continue to build upon that work with our counties and with our local partners, with the building industry, the insurance industry, our utility industries, all coming together to really make sure our communities are prepared. But as I reflect back here of some of the successes, we right now have $250 million available. And stealing a little bit of your thunder here, Patrick, but from CAL FIRE, we're so vested in making sure that this money goes into projects that are helping support local communities, wildfire resilience. But I really pick up on Don's comments. We too are really looking forward to going from just focused in on acres treated, which is a really good workforce metric, but really moving into what is next. How do we really measure the success of that? And we've talked about that here, but these grants, again, $250 million out and available. But just this past month, I was in the beautiful county of Alpine with the Board of Supervisors to recognize the fact that our state has hit 1,500 Firewise communities. So 1,500 neighborhoods have come together and said, we want to do something about wildfires and we want to be prepared. And so the amazing work we do here at this level is great, but being able to see the grassroots efforts to do this as well is really inspiring. So again, we highlighted Alpine County, but 1,500 other communities doing that as well. So again, very much looking forward to hearing more about the draft action plan, but looking forward to having an opportunity to pitch to all of you our effort and our plan to build a strategy really related around how we prepare our communities.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Supervisor.
Thank you, Secretary, and good morning, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to kind of reflect back. And I think one of the places I want to start is there's so many partners up here, but also one of our key partners, right, is all the residents of California. So a quick snapshot, where have they evolved, right? In the past 5 years, in 2020, the state was experiencing, incredible mega fires, and it impacted people all over. And I would say, I know residents in my community, but I see this in counties all over the state, took that and responded by diving in, educating themselves, forming neighborhood working groups, working with their counties, working with all these agencies up here. So I think that that's a really important context as we look at this draft, because one of the things that I appreciate in this draft is, and Jackie just said it, the value of partnership and really making sure that we're working with partners across the table, across the board too. So I think examples of that are the way that this plan embraces the county coordinator. Counties have a seat at the table, and it really is helping counties step up to do the planning, the education and outreach, and that investment. Bobby's example of the three-tiered stool. So we have government, we have community and private industry all working together. And I also think that this helps us clarify where our challenges will be ahead. Several of us were in Lake County recently looking at an incredible home hardening project and realizing how hard it is to do one house at a time, right? And so I'm looking forward to talking about that more as well, but really encouraged by all the work here. And again, just shout out to Forrest and the whole team. Patrick, thank you for this.
Thanks so much.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Katie Landau, Special Advisor for Water Policy at Cali, PA, and I'm very happy to be here today on behalf of Secretary Yana Garcia. So just thinking back over the last 5 years, it's echoing a lot of the same themes that others have already spoken to. Really, it's been a focus on the collaboration and the coordination and developing the partnerships that have needed to increase the pace and scale of this work. And that was really, shown in many of the key actions from the last action plan that really required the enhanced coordination. And so across Cali, PA, we've really been working with our agencies and with our other state agency partners to really understand the respective mandates, the perspectives, and the decision-making processes to really sort of address these challenges, like how hard it can be to get individual projects off the ground. And I think, there's things like the secretarial suspension projects for fuel reduction, where over the last year, we have been able to approve over 400 projects, which is, looking at almost, over 95,000 acres of new projects that are on the ground started already. So there are real opportunities that we've been looking at of how we can also streamline permitting mechanisms in our approach to help increase that. Over the last 5 years, the water boards has really looked at expanding their traditional forestry program to include vegetation management, to include wildfire response and the post-wildfire work and utility work and grants and restoration. And that has all been dependent on creating the partnerships and things that the task force have really helped to give an opportunity for some of those conversations and that coordination. In the, the other big area that we've heard from these meetings is the need to have the state agencies to help develop tools that people can use, practitioners can use when they're on the ground. So another big area of focus has been looking to develop those tools. That includes the California Air Resources Board's California Smoke Spotter app that provided a comprehensive overview of latest information on prescribed fires and projected smoke impacts and current air quality. It also is the Prescribed Fire Information Reporting System, or PFIRS, that has been rolled out over the last year to help show where current ignitions are across California, where there's going to be, continuing to do improvements on that. So there's going to be more beta testing on some enhanced features coming out over this summer. And it's also the Fire and Exceptional Event Assessment, Screening, and Toolkit, or easier to call as FEAST, which is an online dashboard to support and streamline exceptional events and demonstrate analysis to develop for prescribed and wildland fires. So I think really is looking at the next 5 years, the next 10 years, it's really building on all of those, the work we've been doing, and really are committed to continuing that work. And it's put us in a better place to tackle the multi-agency projects that we're going to be outlined, that are outlined in the draft action plan that's going to be talked about more today. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Abby.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Edwards with the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, sitting in for Director Acefa. And I echo a lot of what's been said already, but a few things I'd like to touch on that just upon reflecting on sort of the progress we've made and looking ahead for us is really thinking about data, planning, and biomass utilization. So on the data front, we really feel like we have better modeling and data now than ever to really guide our investments and our decision making. And I think the action plan moving forward really utilizes this information to prioritize effective interventions. And really outlines that there's still more work to be done in this space. I think just last week we launched the California, the 5th Climate Change Assessment that really influences and will help shape a lot of that data piece. And last year we also launched the Vulnerable Communities Platform that looks at climate hazards with social vulnerability, which I think can also help add to this data portfolio moving forward with the next action plan. I think the second is support for planning. Since the 2021 action plan, we've responded to key actions by preparing new planning guidance, such as the Fire Technical Advisory the WUI Best Practices Guide, the Wildfire Resilience Plan Alignment Guide, and the Flood After Fire Plan Alignment Guide. And currently we're updating our general plan guidelines and the adaptation planning guide. So planning is important, and we're really excited that the action plan in 2021 allowed us and kind of set forth some actions regarding the planning pieces. And then I think lastly is biomass utilization. Since the 2021 plan, LCI has invested $7 million to develop 7 pilots across 20 counties in Northern California to assess market conditions, evaluate infrastructure and workforce needs, and enhance economic opportunities for biomass and businesses. And we're really eager to continue this work and support the biomass to enhance biomass utilization and advance the forest sector market development as a key strategy. So those are a couple areas that we are reflecting on progress from the last time and excited about moving forward to continue this work.
Yeah, thanks, Abby, and thanks for bringing up biomass and the need to build policy and support for the use of biomass and forest products. That's an area that we have invested in, but need to continue to make progress. And in my role as secretary, I sent a letter to colleagues across the administration with really asking for focus in the remainder of this year to identify just how we can move this issue forward to concrete progress. We know there is a whole lot of vegetation in the forest that has been thinned, which has been important for landscape health and wildfire, but sits in the forest, ready to catch fire if wildfire does come, and all the while leaching methane into the air. That's a waste product right now that could be an economic resource. And so we have to continue to focus on just how we realize that promise. Liz.
Yeah, hi, I'm Liz Meyer-Shields here from the Bureau of Land Management here on behalf of our State Director, Joe Stout. Just want to thank you for an opportunity to share an update from the BLM. We've been involved in this task force since it was the Tree Mortality Task Force, and it's been really exciting to see how it's evolved, particularly in the last 5 years. One of the things that I've been the most excited to see evolve is just the realization that with BLM's unique land base, for our investments on the landscape to make sense, it has to be done with partners, whether that be state agencies, local governments, or some of the other federal agencies. And so looking back over the last 10 years, kind of seeing those partnerships come together it's really helped us maximize the effects of our investments on fuels and forest health. I think the best way to show that is just to provide some updates of some of the projects that we're working on now. On the forestry side, we've traditionally had a goal of 5 million board feet a year offered through timber sales. We've already exceeded that by 2.5 million. So we have already issued 7.5 million board feet of timber sales. And we're doing that through a mix of sales, stewardship contracts, good neighbor authority agreements, and permits. And we've also offered more than 3,000 tons of biomass, issued over 200 timber and vegetative material permits, and treated more than 500 acres of timberland. So I think that goes exactly to your point, Secretary Crowfoot, that we have to be finding an economic use for some of this material. And that's been one of the BLM's focuses over the last few years. On the fuel side, we're also on track to hit our goal of 23,000 acres. We've counted about 7,500 acres, but this time of year, it's hard to get an exact number. So we'll have a better update this fall, but we're definitely on track for that as well. One accomplishment I'm especially proud to highlight is our first stewardship agreement under the Tribal Forest Protection Act. And this was done out of our Arcata field office with the Hoopa Valley Tribe. We've launched a 20-year partnership focused on reducing fire, restoring landscapes, and supporting local economies. They've already started work on this project, and this year we're looking at restoring oak woodlands and prairie and generating between 1.5 and 2 million board feet of timber. So this partnership shows what's possible when we work directly with tribes in their ancestral homelands to do some of this restoration work. And it shows some of the tools that we have available to get this work done. So looking forward towards the next 5 years, we have some changes also happening at the Department of Interior. For example, we've officially stood up the U.S. Wildland Fire Service. Their authorities took effect last month. And so you'll see them at our suppression activities and at a lot of our other activities where you've also seen the BLM. You will still see the BLM, and we still anticipate taking a leadership role on fuels planning and prioritization, and we'll work closely with the Wildland Fire on prioritization and on funding for those projects. But BLM will still very much be at the table for those discussions. And then finally, looking forward, we also just got a new update on our Good Neighbor Authority policy this year, which will really expand our ability to use that important authority for creating agreements with state, local, and tribal governments. In particular, we've clarified that agreements can be up to 10 years versus the 5 that we've been limited to in the past, and that our partners have the ability to retain timber receipts and reinvest those into future work. And so these policy changes will help lower treatment costs, strengthen local economies, and support long-term investments on the landscape. So with that, I think we're really leaning in. We're really looking at ways of streamlining our environmental review and streamlining our partnerships processes. And so we look forward to implementing the new action plan.
Thanks, Liz. Great update and really informative. And big thanks to all the executive committee members for their input on this draft action plan, and really everybody that participates in the task force for your input. So let's get into the meat of the meeting and turn to Patrick Wright, who is our director at the task force, for his report.